born in California and started there.
Okay, awesome. Hi, this is Greg Suddy on Suddy. I am here with Michael Delgado. This guy is the Director of Business Outreach and Operations for the Texas Outlaws. And I am so fired up to have you on the show today, Michael. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity, and look forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to start with that I think is really cool about having you on, Michael, is you're one of those guys that, I mean, there's the director of operations for every team, and he's the guy that's running around doing the work, doing the job. The fans see you out there, and because you're not a player, you're not a coach, they don't necessarily interact with you all that much unless they actually go out of their way to make an introduction and meet you. So they don't get a chance to get to know your story. And so this is a great opportunity to share your story because you have an incredible story. I've done a little bit of background, and I just want to start at where it all got started. First thing, I guess, is that you may be a Mesquite native, but you're actually born in California. Talk about that.
Correct. Yeah. So I was born and raised in La Palma, California, so Southern Cal. So I grew up, and that's where I first learned to love the game. And so, one of the great things my mom did for me is she knew soccer was going to be the sport. So she got me playing other sports first. And so,
Okay.
and then once I picked the soccer ball up, that was it. And so, I grew up playing in Southern California. And then we moved to Mesquite, Texas in 2002. And so that's kind of where I've been living since 2002.
So you actually fell in love with the game before you left California, however, though, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So how old were you when you moved to Mesquite?
So it was right going into 7th grade. I was
Okay.
11. I was the youngest in my class. So we start school out there in California earlier.
Yeah. I know. I was the oldest in my for probably similar reasons, but yeah. So you're 11 years old. You moved to Mesquite, Texas. What do you remember about that move? Was there a culture shock? I mean, what did you think about going to Texas in the Dallas area?
Yeah, I mean, well, we would take our summer vacations to Texas, so I was well aware of the heat. But it definitely was a culture shock at first. Being in California, we lived about 30 minutes from Venice Beach, and
Nice.
then Big Bear was an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So if you wanted to go to the beach or you wanted to go skiing, snowboarding, it was there.
Yep.
And then get here to Mesquite, Texas. And there was none of that. So it was for sure a culture shock.
Yeah, I think that I grew up in Southern California, so I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I remember when I was in high school, one weekend, just for grins, my friend and I, we loaded up his truck, and we live on the beach. And so first thing we did, I think it was Friday night. Yeah, it was Friday night, just around sunset. We went surfing, and then we loaded up the car and drove out to the mountains and camped in the mountains. And that was on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we drove down the backside of the mountains to the desert and went for a hike in the desert. And then Sunday night before the sunset, we drove back over the mountains and went to the beach. And so we did the whole thing in 3 days. So if you're not familiar with that kind of thing and you go elsewhere, I mean, I went to college in South Florida. And I thought I was being wise about that because I knew the beach community and all that kind of thing. I didn't have any clue about the humidity. And I also didn't have any clue how flat it was because there's no mountains. You don't have that mountain culture. You don't even have an aspect to that. So when you live here and you grow up here, anytime you go somewhere else, it really makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, I remember my first tournament. We actually played it in Houston. And so we went down to Houston, and I had never been around humidity or played in humidity like that.
Right.
And about 15, 30 minutes into the game, I'm like, what in the world is this?
No kidding. Yeah, no kidding. And okay, so another thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is at that age, that's a impressionable age. When young people move, you're leaving your family, or right, not family, you're leaving your friends, you're leaving the kids that you grew up with and all that kind of thing. You got to make new friends. Did you have that? Was that an issue, or did you already have people that you knew?
No, I mean, I had to meet everyone. I was brand new to the city. I remember playing soccer at first, obviously in the local league here in Mesquite, and it was a shock because I played a little bit of club, smaller independent club in California, and when I came here, we didn't know nothing. So my aunt was like, here's this league, go try it out, and so that's what I did, and that kind of helped forge some friendships.
Nice. Right. Well, teammates, anytime, it's funny because when you're a teammate on a sport, especially as kids, I mean, you're going to make friends. There's also gonna be kids that you don't get along with as well. But I mean, you're gonna make friends invariably. So that's a really good place to get going. When you started playing high school, I mean, in high school, is that Petite High School? Is that right, in Mesquite?
Yeah, yeah, Mesquite Poteet High School.
And you got some. I mean, you were playing well, man. I mean, you got some recognition there, didn't you?
Yeah, fortunately, our head coach Casey Osborne, it was his first gig. My freshman year, I remember my mom dropped me off for fish camp, they'd call it, and I wasn't the biggest when I was a freshman, and this guy comes over and he's like 6'2", and he's
Okay.
like, "Hey, I'm a captain of the soccer team here," and I remember looking up at him and I was like, "Oh, okay." They're bigger here in Texas. And so yeah, so we got after it there, and uh my senior year we were fortunate enough to go 5 rounds deep into the playoffs.
Wow.
I was district MVP, well, co-MVP. Um and I know
Right. Wow.
Woodbury's son, Lennon Woodbury. Woodbury's one of the new assistants over there at the Sidekicks. Me and him were co MVPs
Right.
together that year, and then All
Interesting.
State, and yeah, so it was a very fun time there at Mesquite Poteet.
Wow. So you keep in touch with him as you've gotten older?
Yeah, yeah, we still talk. He just recently took a new gig with the Red Bulls Academy. So he
Okay.
recently moved from Austin over there here recently.
Okay. All right. Talk a little bit before we get into your college careers and what was going on there. Talk a little bit about the Dallas, um, the greater Dallas community and area and stuff, because I think a lot of people don't realize and understand exactly how that area is set up. I mean, I know that there's Dallas Fort Worth, and then there's Mesquite, and then there's Plano and Frisco, and I mean, there's a lot of places and names that sports fans, especially soccer fans, especially MASL soccer fans, are familiar with, because there's Allen, Texas, where the Sidekicks play. There's Mesquite, Texas, where the Texas Outlaws play. Frisco is where the National Soccer Hall of Fame is located.
Yep.
But you don't fly into any of those places. You fly into Dallas Fort Worth, or either that or Dallas Love Field. So, talk a little bit about that community and how that works out.
Yeah, so obviously DFW, is a hotbed for soccer. And we're located, just east of Dallas, in Mesquite. We compete here at the famous Mesquite Arena, where the good old Mesquite rodeo is held. And then Fort Worth is its own. I
Nice.
always tell people Fort Worth is its own thing and Dallas is its own thing. It's two completely different places. And
Right.
then, obviously we've got FC Dallas up in
Right.
Frisco, and the Sidekicks out in Allen.
Right. Right. I have family that lives in Plano, so I've been out there a couple of times. In fact, I had an opportunity to go to Frisco for the North American Soccer League 50th anniversary when they opened, it was the inauguration, grand opening of the Hall of Fame when they opened it
Yeah.
there at the stadium. So I've been there a little bit of understanding about the area, but I know that it's a lot of different, and like you say, Fort Worth is Fort Worth, Dallas is Dallas, and if you live in Fort Worth, don't be telling me that I'm from Dallas.
Exactly.
Right. So you went to university at Howard Payne University. Now that's not that far away, is it? That's sort of southwest of the Dallas area.
West. Correct? Yeah. So when I got done playing, I thankfully I had the opportunity. Me and my best friend actually went to Argentina to go and try to make it to the next level. And I was graduated. My best friend, he still had one more year of college left. And so that summer, once I was done, we took off to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And basically it was a spot where there was players who maybe had ACL injuries or got injured. They were there training, and then they had players from all over the world. We would train 6 days out of the week. We played on Sundays, and then their job was trying to get us, in front of teams to be bought, in essence. And so I was 17 at the time. Both me and my buddy, we both got several offers. I called my mom and was like, hey, they've offered, and she was like, well, if David's staying, then you can stay out there as well. And so David, I was like, well, call your parents and see if they're cool with it. And of course he had one more year of school left. And so his mom was like, when you finish, you can go back. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be staying here. And so then, I went to Mexico, had a couple tryouts there. My dad is from the Guadalajara, Jalisco, Atotonilco area. And before we had left, there was about 6 of us that had committed to Howard Payne, which is in Brownwood, Texas. It's about 3.5 hours west of Dallas. So it was far enough from home, but close enough if we needed to get back to Dallas, we could.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, anytime when a young man is thinking about going to university, man, it's that thought process, right? It's like, do I want to stay home around the family, or do I want to get the heck out of Dodge and be as far away as I possibly can go?
Absolutely.
But so that's a nice mix. I went the other direction, man. I'm from Southern California, and I went all the way to Boca Raton, South Florida.
Okay. Yeah, all the way across.
I got as far away as I possibly could. But so you're at Howard Payne. What were you majoring in? It looks like you were majoring in Spanish education. Is that right? Or at least that's what you finally got a degree in.
Yeah. So
talk a little bit about
originally, as a young 17-year-old, I had no idea what I was going to do at that point. But, I had, I started preseason, and then 2.5 weeks into my freshman year of college, after I just had played my second college game, I was involved in a fortunate car accident, which changed the trajectory of my playing career and my life.
Wow. Right. Elaborate about the accident if you feel like if you can.
Sure.
I mean, talk about what happened and what your injury was.
Yeah. So this car accident happened August 31st, 2008. Like I said, it was 3 weeks into my freshman year of college. We were taking a buddy of mine to the airport in Fort Hood, Killeen. So it was about an 1.5-hour drive from Brownwood. And I drove there. It was myself, my good friend Chris, one of my teammates that I grew up playing with here in Mesquite. We played club in high school together. And then one of our teammates on the women's side. And so we drove out with about 10 minutes to get there. I got really tired. And so once we got there, I told my teammate, I was like, hey, man, I'm about to fall asleep. Like, I need you to drive home and get us home. And so so we dropped Chris off, and we took on our trek back, and we were about 30 minutes from getting back to campus. And my teammate, he fell asleep at the wheel, and we went off the side of
Oh
the
no.
road, flipped vertically 3 or 4 times, and then ended up
Oh no.
turned upside down. And
Oh no.
so thankfully there was a nurse right behind us, and so she came over. The car wasn't on fire or anything like that. And
Right.
so she called the ambulance, and we ended up getting care flighted to the hospital. And the result of that car accident was that I became paralyzed from the chest down. And
Okay.
I went from being at a high where I thought, I'm where I want to be, when I was in Argentina, to in the snap of a finger, everything being taken from me. So adversity
Wow.
struck.
What about the other people in the car?
Yeah. So the my teammate on the women's side, she got care flighted with me as well. And then my teammate that was driving, he didn't get care flighted, but he, obviously got thrown around as well in the car accident. I was the one that was hurt the most severe.
Hmm.
And then my teammate actually ended up with some back problems as well. And then
Well,
it was my
Michael,
first
I mean,
helicopter ride. Yeah, but I don't remember it.
okay, all right. Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, this is a very tragic story. But I mean, trying to find silver lining around it at all. I mean, everybody lived. I mean, this was
Yeah,
obviously an accident that could have been fatal.
absolutely.
And so everybody lived out of it. That's a blessing. Um, but yeah, like you said, this is life. Literally, nothing shy of life changing. Um, you have to go through not just the physical changes, but like you say, the emotional hit of what that's going to do for for what are you going to do now. And so talk about that period of time. I mean, you have to go through physical rehab, you've got to go through surgeries, you got to get your head back in the game. Talk a little bit about how that whole process went for you.
Yeah, so I think one thing that really helped through this process is seeing my parents. My dad came over from Mexico, to get a better life. My mom, her family, she was born in Austin, and so just seeing them put their head down and get after it and work, and that mindset. And I was 17, at the time too. I 3 months before that, I was had goals and trying to make it in the pro circuit. So I think,
Right.
when this adversity struck, I still had those young goals and ambitions. So that kind of helped me when I did. It was a 14-15 hour surgery. I have 2 rods in my backs with 150 plus screws in there. So it was an
No
intense
kidding.
surgery. And I remember at first going on to therapy. I had a collapsed lung, and I wanted to go to uh, a big therapy in Houston. One of the reasons, honestly, I wanted to, because I wanted to kind of get away from people. And the other rehab was in
Okay.
Dallas, and I knew if I was in Dallas, people would be coming up all the time, and I kind of wanted to 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 get away at first. But I'm thankful that I
Right.
did come to Dallas, because when any of us go through adversity or facing something like this, it's super important the support that's around you, and
Right.
having that support to help you get back on your feet and
Right.
continuing moving forward.
Right. I could see how listening to you tell the story. I mean, I can see how both plays in the mind. One thing is, I want to concentrate on this myself. I want to do this myself. I don't want people constantly coming in. I want to get on my own and get after it by myself. But at the same time, if you actually do that, I could see also the running the risk of falling into a depression,
Yeah,
a loneliness or depression, as being something that could really, hold you back.
yeah,
So hanging out where people love you and know you, care about you, can come and support you, is hugely important.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm glad you made that decision as well. So now there's that story. Now, what's the result from that story? So one of the things that you did was decided you wanted to stay in the game. And in
Yeah.
staying in the game, you started to get into coaching. Talk a little bit about how that worked out.
Correct. So thankfully, when I got out of rehab and stuff, I was in the hospital and rehab for about 4 months. And so my high school coach, Casey, was like, Delgado, season's about to start up. And, my best friend David, it was his senior year. And so he was like, why don't you come out and help me out? And, just be out here on the field. I think that'll be good for you.
Nice.
So I'm very grateful for that opportunity, because it's really what motivated me is, that year, the year before we got knocked out in the 5th round, and now the boys are back, with wanting to outdo us there and go further. And thankfully we went all the way to the state championship, and we ended up losing in the state championship. But after that, I kind of told my mom, I was like, hey, I'm ready to go back and finish what I started, go back, finish out my degree, and be a part of soccer still. And so my college coach and my high school coach, they were best friends, obviously, like I told you. So Coach Wright was immediately, and then also Coach McCutcheon, who started Howard Payne. They were like, come on back. We will figure out everything, as far as housing and how all that will work. We'll figure it out with you. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity. So I went back to Howard Payne and I became a student coach while I got my degree in Spanish education and coaching.
Wow. And so your support went well beyond just your family. I mean, you had friends that had your back. You had coaches that had your back, administrators that had your back, and pushing you along and encouraging you to go forward. How amazing is that? That is just outstanding. I imagine that these are people that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. I'm super grateful and thankful for just giving me the opportunity and encouraging me.
And you didn't stop there. You moved. So you did your run at Howard Payne. And where was the next place that you went to school? Was that let me see if I can find it on my list before you tell me. I just want to see if I've got was that Paul Quinn College?
So that was my next coaching stop. But I did my master's between 2013 and 2015. I did my master's degree at Concordia, Irvine.
Okay.
I did the coaching and athletic administration. So that's what I got my master's in. And by that time, I had become an assistant coach for Howard Payne on the men's side. And then one of my good buddies, he got the call from Paul Quinn to start the men's and women's soccer program. So he reached out to me and was like, hey man, do you want to come over with me and help me start this program? And so we both, came to Paul Quinn. I came over as the men's and women's assistant coach. And so we started Paul Quinn from the ground up. And yeah, it's been a really, just building everything and then learning from our players and just continuing to grow the team and the sport here.
So you say here, does that mean you're still at Paul Quinn?
So I'm here in Mesquite, still.
Okay.
Here in
good.
August.
Okay, very good. So
in August, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you started collegiate level coaching on some level. At some part of collegiate levels coaching, you started in 2009.
Yep. And
you worked through your associations with 3 different colleges, men's and women's. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that there's a USCAA national championship 3 years in a row. What's that?
Yeah, so on the men's side here at Paul Quinn, we made it to the national tournament, the USCA national tournament, 3 years in a row. We finished third all 3 years, and so got to be a part of that twice as an assistant coach and once as the head coach. And so it's been a fun ride of just going out there and proving ourselves and just
Right.
really making a name for ourselves.
But this is, I mean, at least as far as 2001. In my notes, I'm seeing 2001 as part of the men's coaching program. Were you part of this program up until more recently than that?
Yeah, so at Paul Quinn, I was the assistant from 2015 to 17. At 2017, I was the head coach for the women's team and the assistant for the men's. And then in 2021, at the end of it, is when I was the head coach for the men's and the women's. And so for the last 2-3 years, I've been running the men's and the women's program at Paul Quinn. And then it's just weird how things work out. Our general manager here that took the job in August for the Texas Outlaws, Brad. I had known him back years ago through collegiate coaching. And so when he got this job, he called me and told me he wanted to bring me on board. He didn't know what exactly that would look like,
Right.
but he was like, I need to have you on. And so then
Right.
things started to turn.
That's awesome. And we're going to get to that here in just a very few seconds about your time with the Mesquite Outlaws. But first, I just want to I want to put a timeline, 2009 to 2022. So you've got 13 years of collegiate level soccer coaching, and pretty much all of that is from a wheelchair.
Correct.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you that stupid question. Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask you that stupid question, Michael. How does a guy who can't use his legs coach a sport that only uses its legs?
For sure. So, at first it was just kind of as the student assistant, really sitting back, learning and stuff. And one thing that my McCutcheon always told me that he was at Howard Payne. He was like, I never want you to put on your resume or anything that you're in a wheelchair, because when you enter that
Right.
door, people are going to know what you're about and
Right.
what you do. And so
Right.
one thing that I always, utilize and make sure that I'm aware of is making sure whether it's a college coaching camp or just a camp that I'm at, or if it's with my group, is finding and identifying a player that is maybe has a higher IQ or is basically going to be the person that's going to be my feet in essence. And so I'm always paying attention and focusing to see who that person is, whether it's on the female side or on the men's side. And they're my feet. And so if I always tell my guys and my girls, there are a couple of times where I'll get out there and I'm like, if I'm moving faster than you are, we've got a real big issue, and I'll push to get out there and I'll get after it.
So when you're at Concordia University and you're studying for your master's degree in coaching and athletic administration, okay, I've got to assume that you're probably the only guy in the class that's in a wheelchair that's
Correct.
pursuing this kind of a master's degree. That is just outstanding, dude. I mean, I can't tell you how extraordinary that is. I mean, I can't. I really mean that, but I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes even in like coaching courses and stuff, because there's not. I mean, I've done my research, and there's not very many out there. There's a guy that's a American football coach that is similar to mine. He's actually a higher level injury, but he gets out there and does his thing. But it's funny you say that. Sometimes, adaptation is something that I am very aware with and cognizant of any of my surroundings of, okay, if I can't do it this way, knowing and figuring out how I'm going to get that done. And so sometimes I can tell, like, they're like, how's this going to happen? How's this going to get done? And I just get out there and, you know, just start doing my thing.
Well, I am impressed, my friend. I really truly am impressed. I mean, I have thought over the years, you know, I mean, just as a able-bodied, you know, guy, you know, all my life. I mean, I've thought about what would it be like if I went blind? What would it be like if I went deaf? What would it be like if I lost the use of my legs? I mean, where would my head go? And almost right away, and I got to be honest with you, buddy, almost right away, the first thing that comes to my mind would be this life crushing depression.
Yeah.
And to be a person that, I mean, obviously I know you had to go through that, but to be somebody that just, you know, pulls your boots up, excuse the pun, but you know, and and goes with it, and gets to the place where you are today. And let's talk about the place where you are today. So how did this happen from Brad to join on? So he's been recently brought on as the general manager for the Texas Outlaws, and he's going to take on this new operation for him, and he's going to bring in some people around him to circle himself around. Before I want to get into this, there's something that is in my notes, and it's that Michael lives daily by his motto: refuse to lose. And tell me where that motto came from.
Yeah. So Casey Osborne, my high school coach, this is where refuse to lose all started. It was one of our mantras that we brought forward for our program. And it simply says, you know, in everything that we do, whether it's on the field or off the field, whether it's in the classroom or it's in a simple conversation like this, everything we do, we refuse to lose. And so
Right.
just that mindset of in anything that we do, we're going to go and work to win and refuse to lose.
That's awesome. And it marries rather nicely with Brad's mantra statement of get after it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Brad's one of his big, just get after it. And you know, that's something that you hear here in our
Right.
front offices all the time. We just got a text earlier, and after he touched down over there in Utica, and it's get after it.
Nice. That's outstanding. So there's an interesting you might appreciate this. Back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, there was a sailor. I love sailing. And there was a sailor in San Diego from San Diego that was an America's Cup sailor, world class. His name was Dennis Conner, and he wrote a couple of books. And one of his books was called, in fact, the first book he wrote was called No Excuse to Lose. And that's an interesting worded statement. What the heck does no excuse to lose mean? But throughout the course of the book, what he explains is that what it means is you take all of the resources that you have, and given the amount of resources that you have, you surround yourself with the best people. You make sure that they have the best education and the best training. You give them the best equipment to work with. And you put all that together so that when you take the field or whatever competitive, you know, place it is, whether it's business or sports or anything, that you take that combination, and if you're beaten, then you have simply been bested. There's no excuse to lose. You can't blame the referee. You know what I mean? You can't blame the referee. You can't blame the stub toe. You can't blame, you know, an air ball that should have been caught. You can't blame any of that because you went into it the best you could possibly be. And if you lose, you simply got bested. No big deal. Congratulations. I'll see you again on the field of competition. I thought, and it blends pretty well, I think, with what you guys are talking about with get after it and refuse to lose thing. It's a interesting deal when people can come up with those mantras and then live with them. Um, so back to what we were saying. So you've known Brad for a while. So there was a relationship already, and he contacted you for this Mesquite Outlaws position. How did you feel about that? What changes did you have to make in order to get into it?
Yeah, so when he contacted me at first, he first told me, I don't know at how I will bring you in, but I really want to bring you in. And so, he was, as soon as he got the job, we were formerly known as the Mesquite Outlaws.
Right.
And one of the things that him and the staff did was change the name from the Mesquite Outlaws to the Texas Outlaws. And so by that time now, we had spoken, and he finally comes and says, let's make it happen. And so what we came up with, he put me as the director of business outreach and operations. And so I'm here in the front offices here with the Texas Outlaws, with the rest of our wonderful team here. So director of business outreach and operations is my role here with the Texas Outlaws.
Explain explain what that means. Because okay, so there's two things. I know what a director of operations does, but what does a director of business outreach do? Is that a marketing job?
Exactly. So
Okay.
one of our things that we've focused on this year is one, casting a broader net, right? And going out into the community here of Mesquite, which obviously I've been here since 2002 and a resident of for a while. So going out into the community and making sure that the community knows that we're here, making sure that the community knows that we want to connect and we want to be partners, not only with the mayor, but with the schools, with the associations here. And so that's the business outreach part. And then the operations part is obviously making sure that we have everything. We've had a couple tryouts already. So me and the rest of the girls and the guys here have been making sure that we have everything in line for those tryouts and for the upcoming season. Now that our schedule has been announced, just making sure that we're those partnerships and sponsorships as well, that we're getting all those things squared away for our big home opener on December 16th.
One of the things, Michael, one of the things that I noticed this was one of the first thoughts that I got when I noticed that the Outlaws were going from the Mesquite Outlaws to the Texas Outlaws. The first thought that I had was probably in no other state. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, when the Tropics were part of it, they were the Florida Tropics. Of course, in Major League Baseball, you got the California Angels, although they now call themselves the Los Angeles Angels. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is because sports teams, communities want to be able to own their sports team. They want to be able to associate that ownership with the sports team. But there's something different in Texas. When you can have, like the Texas Rangers, for instance, when you guys reach out to a broader area fan base, the entire state, it's accepted. It's received well within the community. You haven't abandoned Mesquite by taking on the name Texas. All you've done is taken Mesquite and made it more inclusive of the greater story. And you say throwing a wider net. And in Texas, that works. I actually can see how that works in Texas. I think it's a brilliant plan.
Yeah, so another one of our mantras that Brad is, we are Texas, right? So the other area of focus from my business outreach and operations is our brand, right? The Texas Outlaws. Now we want to make sure that everything we do, from the front offices to our boys on the field, to our coaches, is making sure that everything we do, we're building the brand to be top notch in everything that we do. We're a newer program in the league, and a lot of other teams have history on us. But as you can see, our boys are ready, hungry. Our coaches are hungry, and our front office staff is all hungry to build this brand up and continue to build it.
So I'm going to bring up a couple of issues that are just, more or less conversational issues, maybe a little controversial issues that are directly related to the Texas Outlaws. And the first one I want to talk about is the venue. I don't know if when you guys lay the carpet down, is that carpet going down on top of dirt?
So the rodeo, obviously the famous Mesquite Rodeo, is done here in our arena. And so what they put down some boards over they compact the dirt really well, and then put some boards over it before they then put the turf carpet over it.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. The other thing is kind of interesting is the scoreboard. The scoreboard is huge, and it hangs really low. So you catch a lot of superstructure obstructions, with the ball being kicked into this thing. Now, I would imagine, I haven't been there, but I would imagine that it's super cool from the stands perspective because it is so big that the broadcast on the screen is probably super cool. But what are your thoughts about how low the thing hangs over the field?
Yeah, so it's funny. Yesterday we had one of our sponsors come by the arena, and we were showing them around, and one of our guys that is in charge of the arena here, Mario, I got to hear him kind of talk about this is kind of his baby. Anything goes wrong, we contact him. And so he was telling me a little story about the when they put the video boards up, that he had broken his leg and he was out of the office, and it was actually supposed to be up higher. And when he got here, he was like, "Wait a minute, that wasn't done right." And but it was already fastened in and put in place where it can't be moved. And so the height that it is, that's the height. And so, you will find a bunch of keepers and sometimes players that hit it, and then you get the 3-line, violation. Right. And so our players are used to it, and keepers are used to it. If they're hitting it, then we've got some issues with them. But yeah, we do see that 3-line violation in different times where it hits the scoreboard up there.
There's the Texas Outlaws home field advantage right there, buddy. You guys practice with it. You guys are used to it. You guys know all about it. And maybe the other players do. Maybe they don't. A couple of superstructure violations, 3-line violations. That's awesome. Now I'm not 100% certain of this, but I just want to bring the conversation up a little bit. And this is just you and me talking, sort of talking, and just sort of chatting about a current issue. So the Monterey Flash, just yesterday, as far as I know anyway, just yesterday announced that they were going back to the original arena that they used to play in back years ago, and that arena has a very, very small field. It's back, really dinky, super tiny. I think it's 160 feet, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
The field that you guys play on is also relatively small, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So
what are the dimensions?
We also got that saying, when Monterey's moving back to the old smaller than the field before. And so our arena all the way down, our field doesn't go 200, but it's about 220 feet all the way to about halfway. That's just for the stands. And so we shorten it up inside to make sure that we get the complete field on there. And so because we have, on both sides of the stadium. And so both of those fields, I think they're about identical.
Okay. All right. Do you have an opinion one way or the other about the field size across the league and how that plays out?
I think it's unique that everybody has a little bit different, and it's kind of hard to to do because everybody doesn't have their own stadium in essence. And so, some places you'll go and it's a much smaller field, and some places they even say about us here, the ball bounces, a little different. So I think that's unique in its own way for every team. But yeah, sure. I mean,
all right. Well, the last thing I want to talk about a little bit, real briefly here, is the MASL Combine is starting. You mentioned that just a couple of hours ago, Brad showed up on site. I know that the Combine was held in Mesquite last season. Were you a part of the operation? Were you part of the operation at that point?
No. So I just recently joined here in August, so I wasn't a part of that. But currently, like you said, the MASL Combine has started out there in Utica. Coach Nick is out there, along as our GM Brad. They're both out there in representation for the Texas Outlaws. And yeah, we're just excited. I think it's very unique and I think very smart of the MASL to put on this combine and draft, and I think it's a good step forward for the league because it gives the players and future players the dreams and goals, just like any other sport that's out there, of having that draft. I think that makes it special for the players.
Do you think there's any kind of a conflict necessarily when the teams also hold their own tryouts?
I feel like if they didn't, because you're not going to get guys from other states. I think every team that has their own tryouts, I think it's usually probably in surface mostly players around that area. And so I think with having the MASL Combine at one specific location and then rotating it each year, I think that's clever, and because I think when we all have our own tryouts, mostly speaking, you're going to get kids in that area. We've had 2 tryouts this year already. We've had good numbers at all of our tryouts. And so the majority were DFW kids, but we did have some kids from the Valley, from El Paso, from San Antonio, Houston, a couple Oklahoma kids. But the majority is your DFW kids. And I think that's probably the similar across the board.
Do you know if anybody's been picked up off of your own team tryouts? Anybody's looking good, possibly getting a spot on the team?
I know the coaches, obviously, Coach Tatu and Sagu and Nick. They have a great eye, and we're icons in this league. And so we invited a few of our guys from the first tryout back to the second tryout. That tryout was this past week, so we did the coaches did invite some back to the second, and then so yeah, I think we will probably there will be a couple names here in the coming future that will be joining us.
I mean, it always helps when you can, from a marketing standpoint, it always helps when you can put a local boy made good, on the roster. And put him out there put his name out there and his face out there in the community and say, hey, you might have gone to school with this guy. I mean, he might be your next door neighbor. I mean, he's, that's always a really good thing to have.
And I got to ask you, the unique thing too about us here, we've got currently 2 guys that'll be going to the Mini Football World Cup in the United Emirates, which is David Ortiz and Sebastian Mendez, which David, is from McKinney. He actually, I think the year he went over to McKinney Boyd, my high school coach was over there, so that connection was there. And then Sebastian Mendez is a local kid from Dallas. And then we also got another in Eric Macias, who is a Mesquite-born graduate and from the Mesquite area. And so I think it's great for him and guys in this area. And, Sebas being from Dallas, Mendez, and then Ortiz being from, McKinney area. giving
Right.
these other kids, younger generations, the goals and aspirations to work and be in those same shoes as them.
Well, that's no kidding. And then, of course, having Tattoo, you know, you can't say enough. I mean, you just can't say enough about having Tattoo there, coaching the kids with his legacy history as a player, his, being part of that community for years, literally crazy years.
Yeah.
So having him in the mix is also huge for the younger players coming forward. And you mentioned the World Mini Football World Cup. Yeah, that's 1 week away. I mean, that's just 1 week away. I know that the players are. I think anyway that the players are flying out on either Monday or Tuesday, starting their travel to get out there Monday or Tuesday to make that trip. And it's going to be exciting because it's going to be very exciting because the United States team is looking really good. That roster is looking really strong. The Mexico team looks pretty strong too, and both of them are packed full of MASL players.
Yeah, and couple, I guess about a month ago or not, when they had the Mexico versus US game, and we had some of our boys on that team. Sebastian Mendez actually, he notched the game winner in that game. So, we're just really excited to have our guys be a representation of our coaches, of their community, where they come from. And that was one of the things too for me was Tattoo, Nick, Sagu, all these guys are legends in the game. And, being able to be here and just soak all their knowledge up as a sponge, I'm one of those guys, I'm gonna get after it. And so, I'm at everything, especially when I can be a sponge to those guys and learn from them. I'm super grateful and thankful for that.
Well, Michael Delgado, thank you so much for joining me today. I think we did our job in getting people to get to know who you are. I would love for the fans to check this out. So if you got, it should be easy to share on social media. If you have any desire to do that, throw it out there, punch it out there, get the people to know who you are because you have an outstanding story. You're an incredibly affable guy. And I'm really excited to have gotten a chance to talk to you today. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And, we look forward to this upcoming MASL season. Like I said, we're just going to work and get after it here in the front office. We got a great team. And then on the field, our boys are going to get out there and get after it. So we're excited about everything that's to come.
I'm excited to see what the new blood Texas Outlaws end up looking like too. I mean, last season, the Mesquite Outlaws started off really strong and then something happened towards the end of the season. But I'm excited to see it. You guys definitely have skill. Like you said, a couple of your players are recognized across the league as being superstar talents, not just in the league, but also for the national team. Go USA, go Texas Outlaws, buddy. I'll talk to you later sometime, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.